Good evening and thank you for joining us for our program today of On Call. Of course, I am your host, Thalissa McClure, and with me in studio is our resident doctor, Dr. Maxwell Adeyemi. Dr. Max.
Good evening, Thalissa. How are you?
I am good. Welcome to today's program.
Thank you.
Right, and you've given us a very interesting topic for discussion today. And today's topic is herpes simplex.
Right.
But you know what's the funny thing before we get into the program, per se, directly? Herpes is one of those things that you commonly hear about, but I'm not sure how many people are completely au fait with how it affects one. And we know that it's something sexually transmitted, but that's not the only way you can get it.
No.
But I think it's one of those things that we put in a box, and I don't think people even understand the, I don't want to say frequency, but the amount of people that are infected and affected. It's something that's just one of those things that you put on the taboo, and not much discussion is generated about it. So it was very interesting reading up in preparation for today's program some of the things that I've learned, and I know our editor has indicated that even as the program goes on today that we're going to have some graphic images on screen so that at least our audience can directly relate to what we're talking about. So Doc, herpes simplex,
Right.
what are we talking about?
Well, herpes simplex is one of those viral infections, really, that's transmitted by viruses. Okay? And the name of the virus that causes that is called the herpes simplex virus. You have type 1 and type 2. In short, they call it HSV 1 and 2.
HSV for herpes simplex virus.
1 and 2. So the herpes simplex type 1 cause the oral, lesions that we all see externally in the mouth, around the lips and stuff like that. And, it's usually contracted by contact. The type 2 is more of the genital type, okay? But it can also be contacted, by contact. As well.
Right. So I think generally when we talk about herpes simplex, when we talk about herpes, most people kind of refer to the type 2, which is the one that is, which is more of like an STI, right? Because that would affect your genitalia, right? But I think people take for granted, at least I know I would have taken for granted, the type 1. So you've always heard, and I've always heard, especially, growing up. I guess I heard plenty of things growing up. But one of the things is that be very careful in terms of sharing your utensils and sharing your drink and those kind of things. You drink from a bottle. We know we're not supposed to. But you put a bottle to your head or you drink from a straw and then you pass it to your friend. Yeah, girls like to do that a lot. I know men don't particularly do that. But I know it's something very popular in the feminine community. We would take a sip of something and then we would pass it to somebody else to take another sip. You would be eating from a spoon and somebody wants to try it, and so you give them the same thing with the same spoon. And so tell me, how does one get herpes simplex 1, the HSV 1?
Okay, that is largely transmitted usually by oral secretion. So when somebody contracts the virus, and you have an external manifestation of the virus, which is evidenced by blisters and sores around the mouth and the lips, okay? Secretions from such blisters and lesions, if you come in contact with them, either through your utensils, your glasses, cups and spoons, and maybe physical contact by kissing and stuff like that, or what some of us even take for granted during carnival time, everybody, rubbing on each other, hugging up on each other and whatever, stuff like that. Body fluids and secretions of such, if you have it at that point in time, may be transferred into somebody else and they could pick it up. It's as simple as that.
And that's very scary.
It could be.
So somebody could just be passing and in an active state of an outbreak.
Right.
And bounce me for want of a better expression. Might be friends, bunks, whatever. They might be sweaty, they, something, but some kind of body fluid transfer. And the next thing I know, I have HSV1.
Yeah, it's possible. And this could also happen if you have like infected razors, okay, towels, and any other shared items that you share with someone who has the disease or having an active outbreak, and the virus could get into you.
All right, Doc. You say when the person is having an active outbreak.
I need to also mention that also it does not necessarily have to be an active outbreak phase. Some people could actually transmit the virus even though they're not having an active outbreak. So it's possible that the person could transfer it even when they not have an active outbreak.
Right. So basically, rags, towels, utensils,
razors, go to the barber shop, go to the different places where you can exchange these things.
Simple body fluids like perspiration, all of them can potentially transmit that HSV1, that's the herpes simplex virus 1.
It's possible, yeah.
Right. Okay, that's a lot to take in. It makes you very scared. As I think I was saying to my husband earlier, he was saying to me, sometimes, as if for lack of wisdom, people perish. The Bible does say that. I mean, sometimes we take so many things for granted without understanding exactly what you're exposing yourself to potentially. It's not all doom and gloom. Viewers, please, it's not all doom and gloom. HSV2, how is that? How does one get that?
Well, that is transmitted it's caused actually by the herpes simplex type 2 virus. And usually that is largely transmitted by sexual contact, either oral sex, vaginal sex, anal sex. You could all get that from that. And once you get that, you develop these blisters around these areas, the anus, the vaginal, the penile area, or even in the mouth as well. So you develop this blister, water-filled, crusty-like kind of rash, and that's what it presents as. Usually extremely very painful sometimes too.
So just as with HSV1, HSV2 can be transmitted even if there is not an outbreak?
It's possible, even there is no outbreak, but it's majorly, largely, more commonly during an outbreak. But it is possible that you may also get it even without an outbreak actively happening.
Is it possible for someone to have both strains of the virus simultaneously?
I guess there's nothing that stops you from, if you come in contact with them at different times, you could get them, yes. Okay. And one other thing I needed to mention is that women can actually transmit this also to their unborn child during delivery, during vaginal delivery. So you could end up with a child with neonatal herpes. So the child is born and they're infected with herpes virus.
Right, I know you mentioned, we come into the good part. Don't worry, we come into the good part. I mean, as I said before, it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, yes, it is worrisome. Yes, you really need to be careful. Yes, it is something that you need to pay attention to. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Sure.
Signs and symptoms of HSV. What do you look for? Is it possible that you can look at somebody and tell that they have HSV1 or HSV2?
Not necessarily. You might not be able to distinguish that, okay, based on just looking at the person, okay, but depending on where the lesions are, okay, you know, the HSV1 would normally be around the mouth, lips, and stuff like that, okay, but HSV2 is around the sexual organs most likely, most commonly, I should say, but it does happen in the mouth as well, because the mouth could also be an organ of sex. Yeah, of course, you have the penile ends, you have the vaginal, you have the anus. And those are the places where you find HVS2. HSV2, sorry. All right? The HSVS1 is really orally.
So how would you know if you have contracted either one of them?
Usually once you come in contact with this virus, it takes about, like, say, 1 to 3 weeks for the virus to stay in your body and start, manifesting the symptoms. We call that incubation period. Okay? So you come in contact with the virus, within 3 weeks, you're supposed to show, or you will be showing some of the symptoms, which is usually itching around the mouth, a tingling sensation, burning sensation around the mouth and lips, and sometimes the palate area and stuff like that. And then these water-filled tiny vesicles, blisters will develop. Okay, usually on the lips and stuff like that, and this may actually become crusty as they progress and heal up, and you have a sore, which is what most people call the cold sore, right? And it's very painful. Okay, so that's one of the things. It's extremely painful, very distressing kind of pain sometimes to some people, But generally the symptoms are burning around the lips and itching around the lips, tingling sensations and blisters. Okay, and basically because it is a virus, you may have in some instances of flu-like symptoms, just like any other virus. Okay, which may be like a little fever, body pains, and sore throat, painful swallowing, and swollen glands because your body is responding to an infection and stuff like that. So you may have this kind of fluish feeling that may precede the manifestation of the symptoms. And basically, that's what you look at for. That's
because your lymph nodes would have now become activated and trying to combat whatever virus is in the system.
Exactly. And generally, some people, majority of the people, they don't show any symptom. So they may have it and you don't know because maybe their immune system is strong enough, they clear the virus, okay? I mean, it is known that 75% of the people who actually have the virus, majority of them may not necessarily show symptoms because they can clear the virus.
When you say clear the virus?
Meaning that your body is able to deal with it. It's like you have the common flu. Everybody gets exposed to the flu, but not everybody will come down with the flu. Some may come down with a few symptoms, and within 2 or 3 days they bounce back, and others have it so nasty and so bad that they possibly will be sick and unable to function and can't go to work. So depending on your immune system, the severity may be, altered.
So it has nothing to do with the type that you've contracted, but it has a lot to do with your own internal
immune system is also very important.
Right. So a compromised immune system would therefore cause you to have challenges in terms of getting, clearing.
Surely, that's a compromised immune system will be one of the triggers actually. So that we herald, full outbreak in most instances.
So what are so we saying even somebody who may have a healthy immune system and able to clear the virus and to get on, there are certain things that could cause them to have an outbreak later.
Yeah.
That's what you're calling the triggers.
Right. Because usually what happens when you come in contact with the virus, the first contact, your body obviously will register that. I've come in contact with this virus. Okay, your immune system is able to deal with it. It clears it up. Or, okay, you show some symptoms. And flu-like symptoms is virus. Or you treat it or you don't treat it, it goes away. But it's coded into your system. Any situation that seems to overwhelm your body or your immune system could trigger an outbreak. Again, you remember that you cannot completely cure or eradicate this virus. It's in your system practically for life. If your immune system is able to mask and suppress its, evidential manifestation, you're able to deal with it. If not, then frequently you will get outbreaks. And these conditions will include things like, you know, maybe physical and emotional stress. Okay, you just have some emotional trauma, you have a stress in your family or in your personal life, your extremes of fever, you know, even menstruation in women could be stressful enough for you to get that outbreak. Hormone changes and even exposure to sunlight. Okay.
Exposure to sunlight.
Sunlight.
Why is exposure to sunlight a stress trigger?
Well, for some, not that it could trigger the outbreak of the virus, okay, for some reason, which I'm not very clear, but yeah, exposure to sunlight could cause that. Okay, other triggers would include extreme fatigue, general illness, if you have a debilitating illness, some severe sickness and stuff like that.
Hold on, let me cut you. We will come back with some of those triggers. That's a lot of triggers. And I think we need to go back over those triggers a little bit slowly and probably even elaborate on it maybe a little bit more. Viewers, we're going to a quick break. We're going to be right back. And remember, today's program, we're speaking about the herpes simplex virus. Right, this is very good general information. So call somebody, get them to come and sit with you, and as we are going to be right back after this quick break.
A good friend will not backstab you. A good friend will not speak ill of you. Hi, I'm Minister Bridget Ogbefo. Join me every Friday morning at 6 a.m. for Gateway to Life on the Tobago Inspirational Network. Realizing purpose, fulfilling destiny.
I'm Pastor Terrence Baines, and you are viewing TIN, the Tobago Inspirational Network, channel 137. Don't move from there.
And thank you for joining us on today's program of On Call on this side of the break. Of course, on today's program, we are dealing with herpes, the herpes simplex virus. And before we went to the break, Dr. Max was telling us, you know, that there are actually two types of the virus. There's HSV1 and HSV2. HSV1 is the one that's primarily responsible for the
oral lesions,
right,
you know, and
as he said, the oral lesions, and type 2 is responsible for the genital type, herpes. All right. So we were talking about, just before we went to the break, we were talking about some of the triggers that could cause an outbreak for somebody who may have had the virus, but it is dormant. All right. So, and Dr. Max was giving us a very long list. So Dr. Max, let's go over the list again, but a little slower this time. What are some of the triggers?
All right, like I started before, to do once you have contact with the virus, it's registered in your body and it lies dormant after the initial episode. Thereafter, certain things may cause the reoccurrence or outbreak or flaring up of the virus from time to time. And this varies from individual to individual. I mentioned one of them is physical and emotional stress. Okay, maybe people have a tragic situation in their family and they're emotionally or physically stressed out, or they're personally, emotionally stressed, relationship-wise and other things. So that is one thing. You could also have high fever. Okay, where you have other situations in your body that create a fever kind of symptoms that could trigger the virus into manifesting itself as well. In women, menstruation, okay, could cause that, as well as different patterns of hormonal changes that may trigger the reactivation of the virus.
Menstruation is considered a stress.
Menstruation to some people is a very stressful situation, okay? That's why they call it premenstrual tension and all those kind of stuff, you know? Because in some people it will be really, really stressful, okay? Then you have things like exposure to, you know, sun, okay?
Yes,
for whatever mechanisms, you know, it's not too clear, but it does trigger the virus and reactivate it.
Right.
Okay. Other things, you have a general illness, okay, you have a massive heavy illness that could happen, you know, fatigue and extreme tiredness, it could happen. Immunosuppressive disease such as HIV/AIDS and, you know, things like diabetes sometimes, you know. Chemotherapy for people who are on cancer treatment and stuff like that could cause steroid use, okay, and even simple trauma okay? You just have a traumatic injury and stuff like that, that could happen. Okay, so these are the different type of situation in which someone can find themselves and reactivate or trigger the flaring up of that virus, and lesions will develop, blisters will occur. It's very painful and a cycle all over.
But Doc, as we said, I mean, with the type 1 and the type 2, so the flare-up, when you have an outbreak, does it only manifest, for instance, in the type 1, does it only manifest on your face, on your mouth? And with the type 2, does it only manifest on the genitalia, or can it?
Usually the type 1 is located and around the oral cavity, the lips, the mouth, and around the area. However, like I said, type 2 is usually around the genitals, but it could also be in the mouth as well.
So when you have an outbreak, then those are the areas
where you get the blisters, really.
No. So it wouldn't pop up on like your elbows and your knees? And
not necessarily, okay, except you have another type of herpes that we call the herpes zoster, which is the the varicella zoster, which is really the shingles, which may happen along nerve tracts in the abdomen, your back and stuff like that. That's a different type of, infection.
So they're not the same, herpes and shingles, and should not be confused.
Yeah, they're not the same.
So, right, so if anything else popping up anywhere else along your body, then you need to check it.
Yeah.
Okay. How does one diagnose herpes?
Usually, it's not much test you can do, okay? It's the symptoms that you present with the doctor and the physical manifestation of the lesions that the doctor will observe, okay? Usually that is sufficient to, make a diagnosis. However, in order to confirm most time, blood tests can be done in which you do a viral studies, or what they call a serological study, how your body responds to the virus. They measure the antibodies to the virus in your body, and then if it's within a range, okay, usually maybe 0 to say 9 or 9 to 11 or greater than 11, those kind of things. They have a figure that the lab use in terms of gauging the response in quantum figures, and would now tell you, okay, this is what. It's an active thing, okay, it is indeterminate, okay, yes, it is positive and stuff like that. So there are other tests that are more sophisticated that are not readily available locally, but they also happen.
But you can get them done.
Yeah.
Since this is something that, I mean, as you say, especially if you have a very good immune system, that your body would process and deal with whatever is the virus without you even being aware that something is happening. How popular, Dr. Max, would you say the herpes virus is?
It is a very, very common infection. I don't have the local figures here, but like in the United States, almost like 75% of the sexually active population is, in quotes, suspected to have come in contact.
75%?
Yeah, have come in contact with those kind of viruses. Some may have had manifestations and others don't, but it's an extremely common condition, and I believe it is one of the most common STDs, and even on this island, basically, and it's common.
You said 75%?
Yeah, almost every 3 out of 4 person, adult population, or the sexually active population in the United States will have been exposed to the virus. And we don't do too differently from the statistics most times anyway.
Is there a cure for the HSV?
HSV has no cure, like many of the viruses, be it hepatitis, be it HIV, okay, the viruses usually don't have a cure. We can control their manifestation, we can put them under check, okay, with different types of medications and stuff like that. Herpes especially don't have a cure. We will control the outbreaks, we will minimize the symptoms, and we will suppress the virus as much as possible. That's all that can happen.
Since it could be transmitted, even if somebody is not in an active state of an outbreak, is there anything that we can do to protect ourselves apart from, I mean, especially if you live in the same household, it's very natural to share things.
Right.
Outside of keeping everything to yourself, is there any other way to protect yourself?
Well, for the common one, the coat sores and the herpes simplex 1 viruses, most of the time, I think, I mean, I don't want to make a statement where everybody now starts suspicious of everybody and scary. And I mean, you're living as a family, yes, but usually the highest risk will be when you are seeing a physical manifestation of the blisters and stuff like that. So when you notice somebody having that, then you could take precautions, especially when it comes to what you share, you know, like cups and utensils, you know. Expectedly, you are not supposed to be sharing towels. You're not supposed to be sharing toothbrushes, other things, you know, that are considered private. You know, you're not supposed to be sharing that. But for things that you share, when you notice that this is happening to you, I think to protect others and protect you, I think you should take precautions into minimizing your contact with those things until maybe you're better.
What is the treatment for managing, since there is no cure? What is the treatment for managing the virus?
Yeah, basically the first time you do it and you come in contact with the virus, okay, your body is able to deal with it, no problem, fine, you're good. You can't deal with it effectively, you start to show some flu symptoms. We will treat you just like any other viral illness, okay? A little paracetamol for pain and fever. If you have blisters, then they will give you antiviral, you know, medications to kind of, you know, suppress and reduce the severity of the attack and the eventual manifestation of the blisters. So we try to suppress so there are antiviral medications that could do that, be it in tablet form, liquid form, and also you could also have them in creams as well that you can take. Okay, but we generally just look for what are the symptoms that you are showing, and we'll give you a supportive treatment or just a little symptomatic treatment of the things that are, you know, troubling you.
Well, Doc, we already got the wrap-up sign like about 30 seconds ago, but quickly before we go, is there any way to, since this is such a popular thing, such a common thing to say, should one therefore, if they maybe see a little outbreak, a little manifestation of an outbreak, would you advise or would you say it is acceptable for them to get treated over the counter, or should the best practice be going to, in terms of what would be the dangers then of getting treated over the counter?
Well, the best thing is usually to consult your doctor, really, to be sure that this is what I'm having, because, I mean, where we say blisters and so there are other things that may manifest similarly, okay, there are other symptoms that may, you know, to present with, you know, diseases can present with similar symptoms, okay? If you have things like that that is of concern, I think the best advice is to first check it out with the doctor, be sure that you have a definitive diagnosis, and then the treatment options will be made, you know, available in terms of treatment plan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Max. Viewers, thank you for joining us for today's program. I trust that you really did get some information, and of course, you can always message us on tobagoinspirational@gmail.com. Send us a message. Let us know if there's anything you want to find out. We can always forward the messages to Dr. Max, and we can even answer some of the questions for you right here on the program. Doc, thank you so very much once again for your time.
You're welcome.
And viewers, thank you for tuning in to today's program of One Call. See you next week, same time, same place. Have a good evening.